My name is Dolly Logan, and I was born in West Virginia. My parents had 7 children, and I was the 6th child and a twin.
My twin brother's name is Damien, and frankly, we were spoilt brats.
I know it sounds funny to label myself a pampered brat, but it's true. My parents and siblings say it took a long time before we were born.
To make matters worse, we were born after 10 months in our mother's womb.
So you can see why we were spoiled, silly. We received all we asked for, and more. Well, I got what I wanted.
Mostly because my brother never seemed to desire much.
He was never the materialistic type. And he always preferred to work and earn the things he desired, but not me. I have always loved the things of life and disliked having to work for them. So being spoilt was just what I wanted. I attended the greatest schools money could buy. I was never a bashful girl, and I knew I was beautiful. So I made sure I took advantage of it. Damien also inherited the beautiful gene pool, and all the females at school desired to be with him. But he never paid them any attention. He wasn't a horrible person or anything. He just didn't seem to care about them romantically.
In addition to our appearance, we both inherited our father's brilliance and made sure everyone knew it. Until we reached college, we had always graduated at the top of our class.
That is where a lot of things changed. We didn't want to go to the same university since we wanted to spend time apart.
So at the end of the day, I was admitted into CalU to study arts, and Damien was accepted into Stanford to study computer engineering.
You know, when I was in school, I decided to focus on developing a great social life. But it didn't mean I was going to let my grades go.
No, I understood how brilliant I was, but I didn't want anyone else to know since the last thing I wanted was to be dubbed a nerd.
To summarize, I became the school's queen bee and social butterfly. I was never unpleasant to anyone, but I made it clear that I was of a certain class and they needed to check themselves before approaching me. Let me stop right here and explain something to you. I wasn't a bully or a snob in college. I simply carried myself in a way that made me stand out from the throng, and I enjoyed the attention I received. Guys would always strive to impress me with presents and treats. I mean, I liked the gifts, but the guys never impressed me or demonstrated that they were different from the shallow, empty guys I usually met. I wanted a guy who would make my heart race, give me butterflies, and fill my stomach, even though I never believed that such things could happen to anyone. I always assumed that folks said those things to add color to the stories they told. I desired more than what meets the eye, and it appears that the answer to my prayers was going to be answered on that fateful day. I was standing at the bus stop, waiting for the bus. It's vital to recall that it was pouring on this particular day and I'd attended an all-night event away from my school. Now I needed to return to school and attend my classes, but the bus was nowhere to be found. An automobile drove past me as I was about to call an Uber, and guess what? It splattered nasty rains on me. Ladies, please tell me how you would react if someone spilled coffee on your white jumpsuit. Would you let someone go or would you lose your mind? Now mine wasn't just coffee. The water was filthy and had been spilled. It got sprayed. I lost my mind. I'm quite sure I was ready to go She-Hulk on whoever was driving. I was so enraged that I picked up a rock and tossed it at the automobile. I guess I hit the car because it came to a halt and the driver got out and walked angrily to where I was standing. You'd think the right thing he'd done would have been to apologize and provide me with a proper ride to my destination. Right. Sorry to bust your bubble, but none of it happened. This guy had the nerve, audacity, and right to start yelling at me, demanding that I reply to his dossier. I could not believe what I was hearing. Would you believe that when I told him about the mess his driving had created for me? He said, and I quote, "Suck it up, princess. It's not that big of a deal." Excuse me, not that big of a deal. My clothes was wrecked and I was literally saturated in rain and dirty water. No thank you to him. But he didn't care. After 10 minutes of ranting, this creature simply left me and drove away. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. I ended up missing lessons and getting a cold that day. I promised that if I saw that beast again, I would rip him apart. However, the universe occasionally has different plans. My family arranged a graduation party for me and invited a large number of guests. Damien was the only person who could not make it. He couldn't just leave because he had so many school projects. We spoke on the phone a few hours before the party, and he informed me that he wanted me to meet a buddy of his that he had invited to the party. Damien assured me that I would undoubtedly take a liking to him because he appeared to tick all of the boxes I had drawn up. And I would not lie. Damien was trying anything like this for the first time, so I was curious. I asked him what his friend would wear to the party and how I'd recognize him when I saw him. Damien said he gave the person, whose name I later learned to be Augustus or Gus for short, my phone number and that he would call me when he came. I had almost forgotten about the guy. When my phone rang, the caller identified himself as Damien's friend and said he was standing outside the venue's door. Now ladies, before I continue with the story, I have a question. Why is it that, among the tens of horrible things people do to us, staining our garments is one of the most memorable? Am I the only one who struggles to forgive? Is it just me then? Okay, back to the narrative. I was on my way to see the guy my twin brother wanted me to meet, and as I approached the door, I was clutching a cup of red wine in one hand. I spotted a familiar automobile parked outside. No, it cannot be, I said to myself, as I was clearing my mind and ensuring myself that my mortal enemy, the character who splashed me with dirty water and then abandoned me in the rain without an explanation, was in the same location as I was. Guess who pokes his ugly head and has the audacity to give me a stunning smile? No, I needed to focus. Yes, you guessed it. That monster who not only forced me to skip my courses that day, but also caused me to develop a cold without considering the implications. I spilled my drink all over him. He now wore a salmon-colored t-shirt, white jeans, and white sneakers. So you may be confident that my red wine had an affect before he could register what had happened and respond, I promptly replied. This is for wrecking my day and giving me a cold. And then I stormed out. Now I understand that what I did may make me appear childish, but to be honest, I don't mind. I was so enraged that I spent the rest of the day in a sad and filthy attitude, but if that was the last time I saw him, I would have been fine. Unfortunately, it wasn't. He actually reported me to my twin brother, Damien, who called me. Despite being twins, Damien and I don't always agree on everything, but whenever someone reports one of us to the other, we always consult before jumping to conclusions. Damien asked why I did what I did, and I explained what Augustus did that day. Damien quickly became agitated and hung up, but I was unconcerned since I knew what was going to happen next. He was going to call Gus and probably cut him off for his behavior. He never phoned back the remainder of the day, but the next day I received a text from someone you'd never expect. Augustus had texted me to apologize and invited me out to lunch. Now, ordinarily, I would decline, but who turns down free food? I accepted his invitation, and when we met, he revealed what had happened that day. Carr explained that his father had just told him that he was leaving his mother for a younger woman. However, this was not an excuse to be a butthole, but I forgive him. To shorten the long tale short, we began dating. Gus was not what I expected. He was more unbelievably hot, loaded, successful, sweet, older, and not overly elderly. But you understand what I mean. And an absolute gentleman. Gus was an engineer and the youngest to reach his position where he worked. Despite coming from a wealthy family, he worked tirelessly to gain what he had. It was easy for me to understand why Damien liked him enough to recommend him. Gus understood how to treat a lady to presents, affection, attention, time, and most importantly, food. It was not difficult for me to accept his request to marry him. Ladies, this man gave me such a fairy tale-like, magnificent wedding that I mentally slapped myself. Marriage to Gus was meant to be lovely, and despite the fact that I worked, he never ceased indulging me. He constantly came back with gifts, planned. They surprised me with excursions, took me on spa dates, and even encouraged me to have a TikTok account. This dude literally revered the earth I walked upon. So what did I do? I threw caution to the wind and chose to make a huge mistake. Now that you know a little bit about both of us, let me tell you how I applied to all of the plans in the book with the hopes of being able to have it all forever. Unfortunately, I couldn't. I would have said, get a bowl of popcorn. However, I believe that preparing a full course dinner is preferable because this may take some time, and you do not want to miss any of the action. Life with Gus was more than ideal, and I was living every woman's fantasy. But something happened. I became greedy and wanted more. I didn't want to abandon Gus or anything to be with another man. I wanted Gus and another person to please me, don't get me wrong. Gus was something else behind closed doors, but I figured, why settle for vanilla ice cream when I could have chocolate chip flavor on top? Vanilla. Silly, right? Yes, I understand, but it seemed like a decent idea at the time. Gus and I didn't have children yet. Even though he has a soft spot for children, he promised to wait until I was ready, so I had no extra responsibilities other going to work and occasionally cooking for Gus, people from this world. When I say that, I mean that I read books, watched cassettes and YouTube videos, and listened to numerous podcasts to prepare myself and know how to go about my flavor hunting without having my vanilla melt in my hands. I made notes and ran through several scenarios in my thoughts until I came up with the right approach. Or so I thought. So I convinced Gus that I needed to change my job. I resigned my current job and hunt for a similar position in a region where neither of us is well known. When I told him that my co-workers were making things difficult for me, he offered to talk to my manager. I just warned him that it would only make matters worse. This man trusted me so much that he didn't detect any wrongdoing and agreed. I soon found another employment on the opposite side of town. I knew Gus wouldn't bother going, and it seemed like the cosmos was on my side that day. On my first day, I discovered my chocolate chip flavor, and boy was he okay. Ladies, when the receptionist asked for my file, I literally stutter because this dude is so fine. His clothes clung to his physique. His hair was well cut and combed. He had light stubble and lovely dark complexion, and his glasses obscured his stunning blue eyes. As if my Gus were one of those individuals who could make your news week simply by glancing at him. But the one I saw made my knees not just weak, but also melted. I did my homework, and by the end of the day, I knew his name, age, and social media accounts. Do not ask me how. Now that phase 1 of my plan had been completed, it was time to go to the next phase. I followed him on all of his social media platforms, but with a new and distinct account. I made sure this HCC was private and only contained my photos. I bought a few followers and made the account appear legitimate. I understand that was a lot. But you must understand that I was a woman on a mission, and I wanted everything to be flawless. I never made any attempts toward him at work. I always maintained a professional demeanor and just made small conversation during our breaks. I wanted to be the girl he desired, but couldn't get easily. After a few months, he began visiting my workplace to talk and occasionally invited me to lunch. One day he inquired if I was married, and I responded yes. Following that day, our working relationship improved, and we became a work couple. Despite everything, my household remained safe and full of love and joy. You see, I found a way to balance the two. Unlike other girls who alter once they start having an affair outside of marriage, I made sure Gus had everything he needed. I never changed, so he had no need to worry. My work husband, Jordan, invited me over to his house to spend the weekend, and I accepted. I know you'd like to hear what I told Gus or where he was while I was with Chocolate Chip. Well, I informed him I was going to spend the weekend with a buddy, and he was fine with it. Ladies, this is why I discovered how to balance the feelings I expressed. I didn't change or do anything to make Gus suspicious of me. Also, I technically told him the truth. Okay, part of it. As the visit date arrived, I double-checked that everything was ready. I've already texted and called all of my buddies. Well, they're just two individuals I know he'd contact if he couldn't reach me, and I've instructed them what to say if Gus calls. I drove away and was greeted by Jordan with a deep, passionate kiss. After the kiss, he glanced at me, and I knew what that expression meant. It was time to put the chocolate chip recipe to the test and see if it lived up to my expectations. To tell the truth, it wasn't. It exceeded all of my expectations. That weekend went better than I expected, and it represented the second and last phase of my strategy. After my weekend with Chocolate Chip, everyone at work knew we were a match. Jordan never asked me to be his girlfriend, but I knew he already saw me as such. It was always seen together among the ladies at the office. I spent every third weekend of the month with Jordan, and let's just say I was always in need of a spa treatment thereafter. Gus was not left out either. He always chose the proper days and occasions. And when we were finished, he'd spend the next day at home with me, pampering and showering me with gifts, food, and sweets. I was getting the finest from both sides, yet neither was aware of the other's existence. I finally finished it. I now got vanilla and chocolate chip ice cream, which I really enjoyed. Everything was fine until it all came crashing down on me. It was our annual workplace party, and I invited Gus. Before you say something, hear me out. I did this because I knew he would be leaving on a business trip that day and would not return until the next day. He apologized and vowed to attend the following one after he left for the airport. I spent the next several hours getting ready for the work celebration. It was an incredible celebration that was shockingly packed, and I liked every minute of it. I was chocolate chip all night till I had to leave him for some girl time with my female friends. I spent about an hour with them before deciding to leave and inform Jordan that I was ready to return home. As I finally spotted him, he was sitting down with this expression on his face, but he soon changed it as he saw me. I dragged him outside and asked what the problem was. He simply stated that he ran across his old childhood best pal, but he claimed his pal had recently discovered that his wife was cheating on him. I was sad and said, "Why can't some ladies just be content with one man?" He simply chuckled. He asked if I was ready to depart, and I replied yes. He accompanied me to the car. I gave him a lengthy and strong goodnight kiss before driving home. I sang along to Corey LaRay's songs as I drove home. When I arrived home, I was surprised to discover Gus in the kitchen cooking. When I shouted for him, he turned and raced to me with a big smile, hugging and kissing me. I asked him what he was doing there, and he explained that the trip had been postponed to a later date, so he opted to return home. I hugged him again before heading inside to shower and change. After dinner, we both lay in bed, cuddled up, and talked. He then informed me that he had encountered an old friend that night. He stated it had been a long time since they had seen one another and had exchanged phone numbers. He wanted me to meet his wife, but she had gone out with some friends, so he promised to introduce us later. I told him I was glad for him, but I was already tired, so I kissed him and said goodnight before turning to face the other side and drifting off. I was almost asleep when Gus touched me and said, "Jordan said you shouldn't bother calling him, and you will receive the divorce papers from my lawyers tomorrow. Make sure you are gone by the time I get back from work." After making this statement, he stood up and exited the room. I couldn't sleep a wink all night. The next day, he left for work. I wasn't sure what to do or who to talk to. I couldn't figure out how Gus learned about Jordan. Then it struck me. Jordan claimed that night he ran across his boyhood best friend, and then he told me that they discovered that his wife was cheating on him. How? Where have I gone wrong? I was cautious. I took down the plans. I carefully followed the instructions. How could it explode like that? I'd never seen Gus upset, but after the way he spoke last night, I wasn't about to stay and find out. I'm writing this from my car, with the divorce papers in the passenger seat and my belongings in the trunk. My phone has been blowing up because of my relatives, but I refuse to receive the calls. Damien even tried to contact me, texting that he wasn't upset and simply wanted to chat to me, but I couldn't face him, let alone talk to him. You know, I told Jordan that I was married but had gotten divorced. How ironic that I'm getting a divorce right now, and to think I was relishing the fact that I had finally figured out how to have my cake and eat it too. Let's get to the next story. I, female 26, was married to my ex-husband, male 28 for 2 years. We got married just after college. My ex took a high-paying corporate job and I became a housewife. My ex-husband and I met in college. We took different courses but the same set of pals. It drew us closer. Eventually, we began dating. It was not intended to be anything serious. We were both just testing the waters at the moment. But as we spent more time together, we fell in love and decided to marry. Our marriage was going along as well as it could. My ex had to work long hours because that was his profession after graduation, and he was determined to make a reputation for himself. I had assured him that I would help him realize his dream in any way I could. We were young and everything seemed achievable in the early stages of our marriage. I assumed it was no big thing if my husband had to work late hours at work. I attempted to be an understanding wife but failed badly. I used to constantly scrolling over Instagram. People my age were partying with their partners. Someone was leaving for a trip while I waited for my husband to get home. It began to get to me. I informed my ex-husband that we could take a break and go on vacation, but he said we'd go later. At that moment, he had far too many obligations. He assured me that he would do whatever to get rich. We had a good home. We were still repaying the bill. We made a decent living. It's just that we were very impoverished, but we were not poor. Rich. And my ex-husband wants to reach that level. He informed me in college that he wants to be a pretty large man. I assumed that because I loved him, it would be simple for me to support and accompany him as he pursued the life he desired. I was going to experience the pleasures of a luxurious lifestyle beside him. It turns out that this was not a simple task. We were fresh college graduates. At that period, everyone was enjoying life and flaunting it on social media. I would be envious of people enjoying their lives, but I would attempt to let that feeling go. This began to affect our married lives as well. My ex-husband would arrive late from work, and I would start telling him everything I read on social media about our friends and so on. Two things happened following that. Either he ignored what I was saying, or he made a brief vague comment about it. Okay, so that is all. I'd become annoyed by his reaction and start fighting with him. He was already fatigued. When I started battling with him, he got quite angry. We stopped talking for several days and then resumed after our anger subsided. I felt like he wasn't aware of the sacrifices I was making for him. I hoped he would treasure it and appreciate me. I told him the same thing during an argument one day. He became enraged and informed me that he noticed my efforts, but I had forgotten that anything he was doing was only for our future. I didn't enjoy how we argued, but there were no other options for me. I was frustrated and felt trapped in our home and in that marriage. My ex and I began to distance ourselves. When I think about it now, the distance was partially my fault. But at the time, I blamed him. I was irritated with him for not closing the gap between us. Our battle did not subside. I'd keep telling him how he'd changed since marriage and everything. When I said that, he would get very upset and stomp out of the house, closing the doors. With so much more that it felt like the door was about to break, we began communicating less with one another. Every time we spoke, it was either about the house or something that needed to be done. I was even more frustrated because I felt like I was doing all possible to help my husband succeed. And we're not even satisfied with each other, even after that. Days passed and we didn't even communicate properly. I was unhappy because he didn't make an effort to communicate with me. One day, he started talking to me over supper. He informed me that there was a business function and that he would want to accompany him. It was sort of like an office party. He grinned and I smiled back. We were finally going to a party, even though it was for work, and I was quite excited. The day of the party, I went to get my nails and hair done. It was long overdue and today looked like a good day to go for it. I got ready and headed to the party with my spouse. It was a very great celebration. The setting was fantastic and the decorations were spot on. It was on the rooftop of a 5-star hotel and had an excellent view of the city. I enjoyed being there. For the first time, I was doing something enjoyable. My spouse then introduced me to everybody. His colleagues were all his age. Everybody was polite. I finally met his boss at the party. When my spouse introduced us, I simply stared at him. He was a really gorgeous man, slightly older than my husband but with great eyesight. He smiled at me and then asked my husband how he could devote so much time to work when he had such a beautiful wife at home. My eyes widened in response to his words. He complimented me. My husband simply smiled at him and assured him that I was an understanding wife. I felt a little guilty at the time. I hadn't understood at all. I thought I'd do better from that day forward. We met more folks and shared drinks with his colleagues. Everything was going well. There was just one thing. I spotted his supervisor glancing at us more than once. I reasoned that it couldn't be a coincidence that whenever I looked in his direction, he was staring at me. I tried to ignore the sensation in my gut and enjoy the celebration. The party was fantastic. We returned after midnight, exhausted, and both fell asleep right away. The next day, my husband resumed his work. Even though I had resolved to be more understanding of each work, it was not coming to me. I simply felt furious and upset, but I did not argue with him again. Days passed like this again. I wasn't really happy, but I made certain that we were nice to one another. My husband called one afternoon and informed me that his boss was coming home for dinner that evening. I inquired as to why he had acted so hastily. I didn't realize he was going to invite him that day. He told me it was a Friday night and they were casually conversing when his employer mentioned something about handmade food in the city. So he invited him. He explained that it would have been if he hadn't. I agreed with him and asked what I should prepare. He said he'd be home early to assist me out, and that he could pick up whatever I needed from the grocery shop. After the call, I began cleaning up the house and all. I began cooking for dinner. My husband came in when I was in the kitchen. He helped me in the kitchen and then told me I could get ready while he was here. I nodded to him. I was not going to meet his employer wearing sweatpants. I could not determine what to wear. For some reason, I hoped his supervisor would think me attractive. It was completely irrational and makes no sense. But I wanted it. I got ready and even applied makeup. It resembled a no-makeup look. When I went down, the boss was already there. He sat in the living room holding a bunch of flowers. He noticed me, stood up, and handed me the bouquet. I was very impressed by him. He was really handsome and charming as well. I smiled at him and he smiled back, which appeared provocative. But then I assumed I was making things up. We ate dinner together. He was always telling me how much he enjoyed the cuisine. My hubby was pleased with that. His supervisor then requested that I give him my apple pie recipe because it was so excellent. I said, sure. Then we swapped phone numbers so I could share the recipe with him. The evening went pleasantly and he quickly left. My husband praised me for arranging everything so quickly and I assured him it was no issue. We then cleaned up everything and went to bed. My husband had to leave for work early the next morning so he fell asleep promptly. I was awake and surfing around social media when I received a text from his supervisor. It was a simple thank you for the great supper, but it made my heart beat faster. I replied, "It was my pleasure," and the interaction ended there. As I looked to the side and saw my husband sleeping, I felt a pang of remorse for crushing on his employer. But I couldn't help it. It was unlikely that anything would happen between us. It was simply a stupid crush. I told myself as I fell asleep. After a few days, I received a text from my husband's supervisor while he was in the office. He told me he loved pie and wanted the recipe. I discussed it with him, but our talk didn't stop there. He continued to make small talk with me and I reciprocated. At that point, it didn't appear that I was doing anything wrong. I just felt like I was having a pleasant talk with my husband's supervisor. We exchanged texts all the time. He was quite funny and entertaining. It was great to chat to someone like this, especially because I no longer talked to my spouse like this. It was a bittersweet feeling, but we continued conversing. My husband was so preoccupied with work that he didn't notice that my focus was entirely diverted elsewhere, and for the first time, I wasn't worried by his inattention to me. I kept texting his employer, mostly when my husband was in the office. I found it strange that my husband couldn't make time for me when his employer could. I wondered if I was more than just a priority to my husband. Days passed like this. I went to the mall one day to shop. When I asked my husband for money before he left for work, he gave me a few hundred and told me that we needed to save money right now since we had to pay off our home debt and other expenses. It was very frustrating. Each time I asked him for something, he would urge me that we should save and itemize some of our expenses. I didn't say anything to him and headed to the mall. I ran into my husband's supervisor there. I didn't inform him I was going to be here. So it was surprising. He asked what I was obtaining and I just shrugged and explained that I was window shopping. He informed me he was bored as well and had come here to pass the time. He asked if I wanted to hang out together. I nodded to him and we walked to different stores, laughing and enjoying one another's company. My gaze rested on a limited edition LV bag. It was much out of my price range, so I only stared with need and longing but then turned it down. The manager had observed it and instructed me to retrieve the luggage. I chuckled and explained that I couldn't. He told me to get the bag and he'd take care of it. I couldn't accept such an expensive purse from him and I told him so. He then began talking to the salesperson and purchased the bag. I just kept staring at him, stunned, as he handed me his card and paid for the bag, which cost $3,000. I was surprised that they were doing it for me. I was also impressed because spending that much money was not unusual for me. My husband, on the other hand, was constantly concerned about having to pay a few $100s. He then handed me the bag and explained that it was a thank you from his side for supper the other day. I was still shocked by everything. I hailed from a middle-class family. I wasn't used to such elaborate purposes. I came from a family that discussed even the smallest expenses and only spent when absolutely necessary. My crush on him had grown stronger that day. I was still in a trance when I walked into my house with that luggage. My spouse spotted the large bag in my hand and asked what I had received. When I showed him the bag, he didn't smile as I had expected. He started asking me questions about how much money I spent in that bag and where I obtained it. I became annoyed and concluded it was better not to tell him the truth. I told him it wasn't pricey and I got it from a thrift store. He wasn't sure whether to believe me or not, but they eventually believed me. He explained that it made sense. And where will I acquire the money to purchase the bag? Direct from the store? I nodded at him, then took my suitcase to my closet and stored it appropriately. I didn't talk to him about anything else concerning the bag. He became preoccupied with his work again and I began texting his employer. I told him it was really thoughtful of him to give me the bag. We used to text back and forth all day. At that moment he seemed to know me better than my spouse did. That is because he truly gave me time, unlike my spouse who had no time or money. I immediately felt awful about having this notion. The boss was quite interested in my hobbies and how I spent my time alone at home. He listened to everything I said with interest. On a Monday, my husband called to tell me that his employer had requested him to go out of town for a work meeting that night. He arrived home, packed his suitcase, and went for the airport. I was alone that night in my bed texting his boss about my day and such. At this point we had gotten somewhat friendly. He was 30 years old, single, and lived alone in his luxury apartment. He was humorous, personable, and quite beautiful. He asked me that because I was alone, we might have dinner together the next day. I didn't need much persuasion and consented immediately. I couldn't wait to see where he was taking me for dinner. My husband and I only ate at home and rarely took takeout because it was less expensive than going to restaurants for dinner. I never got the chance to dress fancy, but I felt that I was finally getting my chance to enjoy everything. When my husband called me the next day to check how things were at home, I told him everything was good. I was confused as to whether to tell him that I was going for dinner with his boss or not. I decided it was best not to share that with him. He would have asked too many questions and I wasn't ready for those questions at that point of time. I got ready just in time as the doorbell rang and the boss was standing on the door waiting for me. We went to his car and made our way to the restaurant. He took me for dinner at a very high-class restaurant. I had expected that we were taken to a secluded booth which gave us privacy. I didn't know how to feel about the situation. I was sitting in a top-rated restaurant in the city with my husband's boss. I decided to not overthink and just go with the flow. He ordered me wine and after a few drinks we started flirting with each other more directly than we did on texts. It was refreshing to experience this with him. My husband used to flirt with me before we got married. But then responsibilities took over and the romance took a back seat. That night, flirting was on the front seat again and I loved every second of it. I was tipsy and I don't know what came over me as I went to his side of the booth and then kissed him on the cheeks. We suddenly kissed, each with lots of passion, and it seemed so good. I had never in my dreams thought about kissing someone in such a fancy place. After some time, as I realized what I was doing, I pulled back from him. It hit me what I had done. I started feeling guilt for going behind my husband's back like this. Boss started comforting me, telling me it was okay and I had done nothing wrong. The way he comforted me made me more emotional and I hugged him again. He then took me to his house. He knew that I was attracted to him and I knew he was attracted to me as well. That night I slept with him. I had thought to not think about the consequences and enjoy the small good part of my life. My husband called me while I was at my boss's house. Only he told me that he was going to the airport and would be home by the evening. I told him that I can't wait for him to come back to me. I then cursed myself for telling that to him. We didn't like that to each other anymore. Even if he didn't know that something was wrong before, he would know. Now I face-palmed myself and then started to get ready to get back to my home. I didn't think that I was going to meet the boss again. I had only thought that it was a one-night thing. I smiled at him as I didn't want things to get awkward and then made my way to exit his house. But then he stopped me before I could leave. He asked me when he would see me again. I was confused as to what he was trying to ask. He repeated then that he wanted to see and that one night wasn't enough. I felt happy that he wanted me like that. But I was also confused as to how I could do this behind my husband's back without him finding out about this. I voiced my concern to him and he told me that I need not worry about anything. He will make sure that my husband doesn't get to know. I believed him because I also wanted to meet him again. I knew I was doing the wrong thing but I couldn't control myself. I wanted this man a lot. He told me that he will make plans for us and let me know via text. He kissed me again and then I left for my home. My husband came back in the evening just as I was done cooking his favorite pasta for him. He seemed happy. He told me that his work has gone really well and he can soon expect a promotion. I was happy for him but in my head I was thinking, will he be able to treat me like his boss does even after getting promotion? I was so confused as to what I was doing in my life. Was I making a mistake or I was grabbing the lifetime opportunity of having fun and enjoying the luxuries that I was not going to get with my husband? I didn't let my doubts change my decision. I deserved to have fun. So I started seeing my husband's boss behind his back. He would text me the location and I would meet him there while my husband was at work. His boss made sure that my husband was stacked with work so we could get enough time together. I felt a little bad that he was so occupied from work because of my selfish desires. But then the boss told me that my husband liked to work. He was enjoying it. I knew that was true because he liked spending more time at work than with me. I let the guilt go and enjoyed the moments. Boss always had some or other expensive gift for me. It was like he knew what was going to make me happy. Sometimes he would get me makeup and skin care from celebrity brands. Sometimes he would just randomly take me to stores like Dior and let me pick whatever I wanted. I thrived on his attention. I couldn't remember the last time I was so happy in my life. I made sure that I hid all the gifts in the closet so that my husband would never find out about them. I had no explanation if he ever came to find out about that. Boss took care of all my needs. Everything I wanted he made sure I got. I made sure that we were happy in the bedroom. Me and my husband had stopped getting away before I started my affair, so he didn't doubt anything when I started my affair. I finally thought that this could be my adult life. I had stopped fighting with my husband because there was no need anymore. I was getting those things from boss. Everything was finally okay in our life. I didn't get affected when my husband put all his attention to his work. He didn't get angry at me anymore because I had stopped complaining. It was the ideal life I had wanted, but it all got ruined until I had to face reality and come to terms with what I had done. One day, while I was in the kitchen in the morning, my husband asked if I had seen his blue tie. I had kept it somewhere in the closet but didn't exactly remember where. I told him to look for it in the closet itself. I went back to making breakfast when I heard him coming downstairs with a luxury brand bag. He asked me what this Dior scarf was doing in my closet. I was completely shocked at his question. It had totally slipped my mind that I had hidden my gifts in the closet. When I asked him to look there, I started thinking of a lie on the spot and then eventually told him that it belonged to a friend of mine. She had just told me to keep it here since it's very expensive. She was moving houses and didn't want it to get damaged or lost. He believed me, and then I took the bag from him and told him that I'll keep it back and get his tie on the way back as well. I immediately went and checked if he had seen any other bags, but fortunately for me, it was only this bag. I thought of hiding the gifts somewhere else later. It slipped my mind again to hide the gifts as I got busy with other things. One day, me and the boss were going to a very exclusive VIP event. He had been invited, and I was going there as his plus one. I had told my husband that I was going to meet my friend and will help her in packing as she is shifting to a new house. I had told him that it will get late, so I'll spend the night there and then come back home the next day. He told me it was fine to take care. I got dressed in a very beautiful Chanel dress. I couldn't believe my luck. A few months ago, I was window shopping at the mall because I couldn't afford anything, and now I am getting dressed in Chanel. The evening was beautiful. There were many photographers. It was a gallery opening of a celebrity artist, and various celebrities were attending it as well. There were various photographers as well. I didn't pay attention to anything then, just enjoyed the evening. I wasn't used to being in places with such high-profile people. I then went with the boss to his home and spent the night there with him. I got back home the next day around noon, thinking that my husband would be in the office. I didn't expect to find my husband sitting in the living room reading the newspaper. I asked in a casual tone why he didn't go to the office, as I made my way to the kitchen to make some coffee for myself. I heard him telling me that he was waiting for me. I thought it was weird, but let it go. He then asked me how my night was. I told him it was nice. I lied to him as to how I helped my friend, packing up everything, etc., etc. By the time my story had finished, my husband had come to the kitchen. He looked like he was angry, but I couldn't understand why. I asked him what's wrong, and then he showed me the newspaper where there was a picture of me in his boss' arms. It was from the gallery. The picture was really small, but it was clear that it was me and him. I looked at my husband to tell him something about how it wasn't true, but the anger in his eyes shut me up. He then went and brought all the bags that I had hidden in the closet. I even forget to take the bill out of them. All those bills were signed to his boss. I was literally screwed. My husband got even more angry after that. He told me how I didn't think that I would go so low just for fame and money. He then asked me harshly if I was sleeping with his boss. I had tears in my eyes. There wasn't any point in denying the truth, so I just nodded and kept crying. He looked like he was hurt for a bit, but then told me to get out of his house. He said that he never wants to see my lying face. I tried to go closer to him to hug him and apologize to him, but he stepped back and crossed his arms. He left the house and told me that he wanted me gone by the time he got back home. I called up the boss in tears. I was going to ask him if I could stay over at his place for a few days, but a woman picked up his phone. I asked her who she was, and she told me that she was his fiancée. That was a shock to my system. He had told me that he was single and lived alone in the city. The woman on the line must have known who I was, as she started calling me names for sleeping with her fiancé. I couldn't believe what she was telling me. After getting yelled at, I ended the call. I didn't know what the fuck to do anymore, since I had lost my husband and my house and had no place to go. Boss had also lied to me. I had no idea he had a fiancée. I wasn't going to get homeless. I sat in my living room and thought that I was going to convince my husband to forgive me. I had believed that once he gets to know the circumstances which led to everything, he will forgive me, and we would be able to start a new phase of life from that point. I waited anxiously for him to come back home. He came back home after 3 to 4 hours with bloody knuckles. I asked him what had happened, but he didn't reply to me. He looked at me with murder in his eyes and asked me why I was still there. I went to get the first aid box and came to him, but when I touched his shoulder he pushed me away and then started telling me how everything was fucked up for me. He told me that he had gone to see his boss and punched him. He then told me how he had a fiancée. He laughed when he saw my face in confusion. The player got played, he said sarcastically. He told me how his fiancée was living in Canada and they were doing long distance. He then revealed the whole truth, that his fiancée had also seen the picture and came here to talk to him. She will take him back and you will have nowhere to go, he said in an angry whisper. I asked him if she could take him back. Why couldn't he take me back? He then laughed and told me because he wasn't stupid like her. My husband had talked to his boss, his fiancée, and even convinced her to forgive his fiancée. He knew that if she forgave him, he would end everything with me. He said that he wasn't stupid, that he would end things with me and would keep the option open, that I could go with his boss. He then scanned all the bags and looked me in the eye. He told me that I cheated on him for all this only. He then laughed as my phone rang. His boss was calling me. My husband told me to pick it up. Boss told me that his fiancée gave all the gifts back, so I should send it back to their home. I was shocked but didn't know what else to do. My husband kept smirking at me. I went to my closet and picked out all the gifts that he had given me. My husband was waiting in the living room when I came back. He told me that he had already called the lawyer and soon the divorce proceedings will start. I begged him to give me another chance but he didn't listen to me. He told me that I was the worst person on this planet and to leave the house immediately. I packed a bag and then left the house. I went to a friend's place. She let me stay in her house for a few nights. But then her husband came back from the trip and she told me it was best that I left her house. Even my closest friend didn't trust me to be around her husband anymore. I then left the house and went to my parents' place. They weren't talking to me as my husband had told them the truth, but they let me stay there for a short while. My husband's lawyers contacted me soon and told me about the divorce proceedings. I started looking for a job but it was hard to find one since I had no experience. I got married immediately after college. I felt like I had suddenly been in the lowest phase of my life just because of greed and desire. I lost one of the most important relationships of my life. The divorce process began and it was done quite quickly. I expected it to be dragged through a year. I had hoped that maybe within this year I could seek the forgiveness of my husband. But all hope went to vain as the process only took 3 months. Even in those 3 months my husband made sure to have minimum contact with me. His lawyers handled everything from his end whereas my lawyers represented my side. The court didn't grant me any substantial alimony. All the facts were in favor of my husband and his lawyers knew what they were doing. My lawyers couldn't do anything. I had already lost everything, my husband, my marriage. I didn't even get to be with my affair partner thanks to my husband. It was all my fault. I cannot blame my husband for what had happened to me because what he was doing was just a reaction to my actions. Update: it's been a year since my last post. I see all your comments. I know it was my mistake. I was so young back then that I thought I was missing out on my life by being with my husband. I thought that his hard work and struggle was not of any importance. And I realize now how stupid that was. I have taken a job as a nanny. It doesn't pay well but it's something which is better than nothing. I shifted to a studio apartment in the not-so-good location of the city. I feel like I have lost hope of anything good happening to me now. I have become the wife who slept with husband's boss just because she wanted expensive gifts. Everyone who knows what has happened looks at me with disgust in their eyes. I just keep my head down in shame. My heart filled with guilt for what I have done. My ex-husband, on the other hand, is doing really well. He got a promotion at work. He wears expensive suits. Now he's on the ladder of success while I'm on the road to hell. I've heard from someone that he had also started dating someone really hot. I feel happy for him. Even though I'm sad for myself. I could have been that woman beside him, enjoying all the luxuries if I had patience to stick with him in his struggling times. He deserves all the success that is coming his way. He deserved every bit of it. While I deserve all the hurt and feeling of shame I feel every day. Thank you everyone for listening. Till here I have done something that's making it difficult for me to think straight. My husband wants a divorce from me now because I got carried away with his father at our annual New Year's party. In fact, I think I've done something stupid. And I'm now facing the consequences of it. I'm not even going to try to make myself look good or seek validation because there's absolutely nothing I'll say that will not paint me out as a good person at all. I've messed up big time and I'm 100% aware of it. I just need help from you all. I'll take any help I can get. I just want to make sure that I can get this whole thing fixed. My name is Brianna and I'm a 29 years old accountant. I'm married to Luke, a 30-year-old accountant. Yes, my husband and I are accountants. And you can very well say that it's our mutual careers that brought us together. We met at a function together and got interested in each other. I loved his personality and charisma a lot. And for the first time I broke my rule of never wanting to date a man that does the same thing I do. I never wanted to date someone that has the same profession as me because I just felt like it will make us disagree a lot and there'll be no time because we'll be engaged in different activities. But I had no choice. Ladies and gentlemen, lol, I got charmed by Luke and I forgot all about my rule. In fact, I didn't think we'd last at first. I thought it would just be a fling because I didn't think Luke was ready to settle down. At least I'll speak for myself when I say that I wasn't ready to settle down yet. I'd been single for 6 months before I started dating Luke and I never imagined getting married to him. 2 years later. But it happened. And we got married and never looked back. Well, we never looked back until now. Now I think I'm losing my husband. And that's just me hanging on to an invisible thread of hope. I feel like I've lost him already. What hurts me the most is that his father is involved. Luke hates his father and now I've screws up. The name of Luke's father is Adrian and he's 48 years old. He had Luke when he was just 18 years old. He met Luke's mother, Nancy, when they were in high school and they dated till their final year of high school. But Nancy got pregnant just after they were done with high school. They were both 18 years old but they were still naive. Nancy's mother was sent out of her home and forced to live with Adrian. They basically started a family immediately. Nancy couldn't go to college but Adrian was able to go. Long story short, Adrian cheated on Nancy 2 years after she gave birth to Luke. They broke up and Adrian never bothered seeing Luke again until he was in college. Luke was never ready to accept his father back into his life because his mother always told him how he left her. Adrian always tried getting back into Luke's life. But Luke promised never to betray his mother. So I hope you guys now understand why. What I did is a very big deal. Luke cannot stand seeing me and he's very upset. But wait, before you start judging me, let me make it clear that I didn't have an affair with Luke's father. I would never and I have never. It's disgusting and stupid and I never did that. It's just that something happened at our New Year party and I'm on the verge of losing my husband. Luke and I have been married for 2 years now and we always find time to attend the New Year's celebration Nancy throws. Nancy is now married to another man and he's the one that stepped up to be Luke's father. He's quite rich so he likes to throw a New Year's party every year. Luke always makes sure he never misses it. And even while we were dating, he always invited me. I think I've gone to a total of 4 New Year's parties with him. The first one I went as his friend. The second one is his girlfriend. And the third and fourth one is his wife. But now I don't think I can make it to the 5th New Year's party. I don't think Luke will stay married to me till then. There's usually no drama at each New Year party but this year's Owen was immensely exceptional. There was a lot of drama and I'm still shocked at how things just escalated all of a sudden. I'm writing this to you all barely 24 hours after the New Year's party. Writing is my way of venting and keeping my emotions in check. So when I found myself in this compromising situation, I decided to write as my way of letting off some steam. The drama started from Adrian's sudden presence at the New Year's party. Yes, you actually read that, right? He suddenly showed up at the New Year's party. Luke and I were shocked. But Luke was the one I was really worried for. He always told me how much he hated his father and despised his presence. I know the pain he feels anytime the topic of his father's betrayal is brought up. I'm sure any man that didn't even grow up to see his father would feel the same whenever he told me stories about his father. I never tried to convince him to forgive him. I never tried playing the devil's advocate because I know the man I married would never hate someone without a valid reason. That's why I know that for him to ask for a divorce, I screwed up. And I'm not denying that I'm at fault. And I'm wrong for getting carried away. I never should have done something to upset Luke so much. I would have felt better if it was somebody else. I despise myself for hurting him through his father. If I knew this would happen, I would have taken another decision that day. But I guess if wishes were horses, beggars would fly as high as they wanted before the New Year's party. Adrian had always been showing up whenever he wanted. He always did that before. But whenever he came, the gatekeeper took care of him. Luke didn't even have to see him most times. He just got to know from his mother that Adrian showed up. Before I go on, I'd like to describe Adrian as the perfect definition of an opportunist and selfish bastard. I hate him with every living fiber in me. And I believe that he should never be happy after what he'd done that day. I'm at fault for falling in his trap. But that doesn't mean I'll not wish that his karma finds him. He left his family but never expected them to end up getting successful. So he came back years later and thought it was best to ruin their lives all over again. I never really had an encounter with him before. I'd only seen him once, and that was when he gate dead had our wedding event. That was the only time I'd seen him. But I always recognized him from the pictures that were hung on Nancy's gate. It was so her gatekeeper could recognize him and never let him in. He was only able to get into the New Year's party because the gatekeeper had been on leave as he traveled to go celebrate the New Year's with his own family. It was someone else that had been tending to the gate, and the person had not been careful enough to take notes of the faces coming in. Adrian used that opportunity to get into the party on that particular day. Luke and I had a very intense argument. If you're wondering how our argument was, it was actually very intense and we almost didn't attend the party. We were having an argument about trying to have a child. Luke was ready and I wasn't ready because I was being considered for promotion at work. I knew that getting pregnant would automatically mean that I wouldn't get the promotion again. So that made me very worried. I've always wanted children, but I thought that we had time and there was no need to rush. I didn't want to rush into it and end up resenting myself and blaming other people for my choices. I also love my job a lot and I've always worked hard so I could get promoted and just feel like my hard work helped me get something. That's why I wanted to wait till I had my promotion for about a year before we tried having children. My decision made Luke very angry because he felt like he had given me enough time in his defense. He's actually right, because before we got married, we agreed to try having children 2 years after our marriage. I thought my promotion would come a little later. But then I was surprised when I was told I was on the list. That's why I told Luke to wait a little longer, but he wasn't having it. Our argument lasted close to an hour and we never came to any reasonable resolution. We were in no position to attend a party, but because Luke always promised his mother that he'd never miss any of those parties, we had to keep that promise and go. We didn't speak to each other throughout the car ride, and even when we got to the venue we ignored each other. I've never been known to handle my alcohol. In fact, it's common knowledge among his family and mine that I'm a very bad drinker. But because of how angry and irritated I'd been, I had too many shots. I don't even know what was mixed in those drinks. But I just took anything the waiter had in his tray. I felt comfortable drinking because I believed that I was safe in Nancy's house with Luke around. I knew almost all the faces that attended the party, and even though Luke and I were not in speaking terms, I still believed that I had no reason to worry. I mean, it was an annual New Year's party that I'd attended 4 times in a row. I didn't think I'd see someone that would want to take advantage of my drunken state. So barely 30 minutes after drinking, I had to run to the toilet to puke. I drank too much and was having a hard time standing up straight. I didn't see Luke around and I was afraid of puking in front of everyone. So I went alone. Before I got back to the party, I stumbled upon Adrian. I still remember seeing him in the hallway and he asked what was wrong with me. Yes, I was drunk, but I can remember that part. I don't handle alcohol well even if it's a glass of wine. So I'm sure whatever I took was not enough to wipe out my memory. It was just my body system acting out like it usually did whenever I took alcohol. I recognized Adrian the moment I saw him and then I asked him what he was doing at the party. He said some things I don't remember and then he offered to hold my hand so I could stand upright. I refused to hold his hand at first because even though I wasn't thinking straight, I knew that the fact that Adrian was dressed like he wanted to conceal his identity meant that he had bad intentions in mind. But Adrian didn't give up and he kept pestering me to take his hand in that process like showed up. I don't remember everything that happened, but I know that Luke got into an argument with Adrian and questioned him because he saw both of us standing alone. I was still upset with him, so I left both of them standing there. I went back to the party and decided to take a seat because I felt like the alcohol was going to make me dizzy while I was sitting there. Luke came to sit beside me. He was very angry and then he asked me why I was alone with his father. I explained everything to him, but he was still upset. He then warned me never to speak to his father again. While Luke and I were having the back and forth, Adrian showed up and tried causing a scene. He told me he pitied me because I was letting a man dictate who I spoke to. He started saying things to get into my head and he accused Luke of being a controlling husband. He took advantage of the situation because he noticed my drunken state and wanted to use that to his advantage. Luke didn't say anything because the guests were starting to look our way and he didn't want to embarrass his mother and draw more attention. If you're wondering what happened that made Luke ask for a divorce, then you're in luck because that's what I'm about to say. Adrian asked me for a dance while I was seated with Luke. Luke told me not to dance with him and then he walked me to sit down while he went to call the gatekeeper so he could escort Adrian out. After he left, Adrian managed to convince me to dance with him and he told me he had something important to tell me. Yes, that's all he said to me and I foolishly took his hand and started dancing with him. And I don't really remember what we spoke about while dancing, but I know we didn't do anything inappropriate because I asked his mother just a few hours ago and she assured me that all we did was dance. She was the one that narrated most of the things that happened to me. But she told me, Adrian held my waist and I didn't shrug his hands off. I danced with him and while we were dancing, Luke came back with the gatekeeper and saw me dancing with his father. He was very angry and he tried separating us, but I lashed out at him and called him a control freak in front of everyone. Yes, I did that and I'm not going to deny it because I remember doing that to him. I let my anger over our argument get to my head and then I lashed out of him for no reason. I also let myself get swayed by his father's words and that was wrong. I understand why he's angry because it felt like I chose to listen to his father instead of him. It felt like I picked Adrian over Luke and I made it seem like I was judging him based on his father's words. He hates his father and he's told me that almost every day. For me to have let myself get loose like that meant that I used his weakness against him. I'm wrong and I'm disgusted with myself. According to his mother Nancy, Luke left the party immediately after I called him a control freak. She told me that he appeared to be very angry and he didn't even speak to her before he left. That's the first time he's done something like that and it's my fault. I'm so ashamed right now because I cannot believe that I caused such a scene on such a special day. I let my thoughts get into my head and I ruined my marriage. How could he forgive me? I know I messed up big time. I'm even embarrassed that Nancy bathed me and helped me change my clothes. According to her, I was quite drunk. After everything, I was puking a lot. I can't believe I started my new year out like this. I'm also quite disappointed because I know it must have also been hard for Nancy to watch her daughter-in-law dance with the same man that left her and her son. The fact that she's suppressing her feelings and helping me out makes my guilt worse. I disrespected her too. I shouldn't have done what I did. I should have controlled my emotions. Getting promoted at work is not more than having a peaceful marriage. I called him a control freak because I thought he was trying to control my life by dictating when I got pregnant. That must have made him very upset. But what's worse is the fact that I danced with his father and let him hold my waist. I don't know why Adrian even did what he did. What does he stand to get by dancing with me? I don't know if he has any ulterior motives because it honestly doesn't make any sense. What does he stand to gain by telling me all those things about his son? He kept coming back and asking for a chance back into his son's life. Why does he think doing that would bring his son closer to him? I hold a grudge and I plan on making Adrian explain himself. If I didn't mess up by drinking, I would not even give him the time of day to begin with. It's not his fault. I'm the irresponsible adult that allowed things to get out of hand. I'm at Nancy's place because she advised me not to go see him. She's his mother and she knows that when he's angry, he likes to have time alone. I also know that about him, and that's why I've not tried going to see him. But barely 6 hours ago, Luke came here and asked to see me. I was very happy because I foolishly thought that he was going to forgive me. I fell on my knees and begged him with tears in my eyes. I told him I was extremely sorry and that I didn't mean to hurt him. At first, he just stood there and didn't say a word. But after some time, he told me he wanted a divorce. I was shocked. In fact, I was beyond shocked because I wasn't expecting that from him. I thought I heard something else, and I asked him to repeat himself again. He did that and said exactly what he said before. I held his clothes and told him I was sorry. I tried everything, but his mind was made up. He told me he wanted a divorce, and that he couldn't stand the fact that I teamed up with his father to embarrass him. I tried to make him understand that I wasn't in my right senses. But then he dropped another shocking revelation. He told me he also felt it was best for us to break up because he didn't see the need of staying married to a woman that didn't have the same parental choices like he did. He also demanded an apology to his mother. That was all he said before leaving me alone once again. In other words, he wants to ruin me because there's nothing more hurtful than the thought of losing him. I really hoped things would be right, but I guess it's not happening. I thought he'd forgive me, but he didn't. Do I blame him? Absolutely not. I do not blame him for the things he did because I know he's only reacting to what I did. I'm the one that deserves to be blocked, but I'm selfish. I just can't end my marriage like this. I want to make it work. I want him to forgive me. I don't want my desire to get promoted, to get in between our marriage. My husband deserved more, and I want to make it up to him. I can't let his vengeful father get in between us. And I can't let my wrong choices ruin our 4 years of knowing each other. I need help, guys. Any ideas would be very much appreciated. I'll appreciate whatever you guys suggest. Just please help me out because I'm tired and I'm giving up. Update. First of all, I want to tell you all that I'm immensely grateful for all you've written and suggested. I never imagined so many suggestions, and I really want to say a big thank you after updating you all that day. That was on January 1st. I decided to go see Adrian and give him a piece of my mind. I wanted to know why he thought it was right for him to do what he did. I couldn't sleep just thinking about how he had the audacity to hold my waist and dance with me when he could see that I was drunk. It was hard finding his place because I'd never been there before, and I never thought I'd have a reason to go there. But life happened, and I had to ask someone to ask around for the location of his apartment. I finally found it, and the surprising thing was that I saw his wife and 2 children there too. I knew he started his own family because I'd heard Nancy talking about it before. What I just couldn't understand was why he decided to keep tormenting Luke and Nancy when he'd already moved on with his life long ago. When I saw him at his apartment, I asked him that, and he told me he was just trying to have his son back because he thought it was unfair that Nancy was the one at the receiving end of his care. Adrian felt like Luke was supposed to give him money now that he's a successful accountant. That's why he kept on coming and trying to get back into Luke's life. He felt like he was being cheated. When I asked him why he held my waist and danced with me, he told me that was his only way of getting Luke's attention. Yes, in other words, Adrian is a big bag of crap. I left his place quickly because I realized it was worthless talking to someone that was so entitled to something they didn't ever work hard for. I was very angry, but there was absolutely nothing I could do. I went back to our house, but Luke served me divorce papers instead while I stayed with Nancy. He got the divorce paperwork ready. I guess I started my new year with getting divorced. He's not ready to change his views. Even though I'm hurt, I understand. He's a man that bears a grudge on his father. There's nothing I can do to validate my conduct that day. He can never unsee his wife picking his father's side and belittling him, even though we got back together. He'll always remember that day. And then there's the matter of having a child. He's not ready to wait. And I'm not ready now. I tried doing everything you folks suggested, but I've decided to let it go. I know that I am not ready to be a mother, and he's very confident he's ready to be a parent. If I am promoted now, we'll have to wait another 2 years. And he's not ready. Nancy strictly believes that we're getting divorced over something extremely petty, but there's nothing she can do. Her son is a man of his own, and she cannot question his married life. It's a sad farewell, but I had to say it anyhow. I'm just glad we don't work in the same back because that would have hurt. It would have been difficult to see him every day knowing that we were going through a divorce. At the end of the day, I accept complete responsibility for my actions. And I trust that having acquired these lessons, I will never act irresponsibly again. Thank you for taking time to hear today's story. If you loved the story, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a tale to share regarding your own or someone else's circumstance, please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.